Hey guys, what's going on? It's Andrew from AR Media. In today's video, I want to go over my top 10 personal favorite 4K Blu-rays. Now, this is not going to just be based on picture quality or audio quality. This is going to be my personal favorite movies in my collection that I like to watch in 4K. So let's get to it. Now, the first up on the list is Get Out, and that's probably not a surprise to anybody that's a fan of the channel. Now, I'm a big fan of horror, and this was one of my favorite horror movies of last year. I was super happy for it to get the 4K treatment, and I've watched this countless amount of times since I picked it up. It's a 2K digital intermediate, shot digitally, looks very sharp, looks very crisp, and definitely one I recommend seeing if you're a fan of horror at all, or if you're looking to get into horror. This wasn't a very scary horror movie. It had a lot of comedy sprinkled throughout, and I think it's a good entryway for a lot of people who may not be used to the genre. Next up, we have Inception, and this is my favorite out of the Nolan collection when it comes to movies. I fell in love with this movie when I first saw it, and I watched it countless times since I got it on 4K as well. It's a 4K digital intermediate. It looks wonderful. This is the only one in the set where we do not get IMAX scenes, so we do get black bars throughout. That's my only complaint on it, but besides that, it is a fantastic disc and a fantastic movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. If you're a fan of Nolan at all, this is a must-see movies in my eyes and one of its best. Next up, we have Arrival. Now, I was a big fan of this movie when I first saw it, and I actually blind bought this on 4K for the first time, but being a huge fan of the director, I knew what I was getting myself into. I was a big fan of Enemy, I was a big fan of Prisoners that he's done in the past, and I was not disappointed by Arrival at all. So this was a 4K digital intermediate, and this was a very dim movie. I know there was a lot of complaints when it first came out, because this is not bright at all. The Blu-ray was a lot brighter, but I still think that this is a great disc, and the HDR was very well used on this disc, and this is very inherent to the source material. It's exactly how it was supposed to look, and it's not overly bright like some other discs, but I think it's perfect, and I think the movie itself is great. I think the approach it takes to communicating with the aliens is great, and just a really unique movie that has to be seen. Next up, we have Why Him. So a lot of times I just want to kick back and watch a comedy, and I think comedies are actually really underappreciated on the 4K format, and Why Him looks great and is really funny for those who haven't seen it. So it's a 2K digital intermediate, upscaled to 4K, but the HDR on here is amazing. The colors pop off the screen. It's a very bright and colorful movie, and just James Franco is hilarious, and this Bryan Cranston's hilarious, and I just think it's a really funny movie. Great jokes, great landing on the jokes, and just makes fun of the whole tech Silicon Valley culture in a really fun way. Next up, we have T2 Trainspotting. Now, being a huge fan of Trainspotting, I had to put this on my list because I always find this making its way into my player, especially if I watch Trainspotting that day, and I never really see this disc talked about, and it's just a fantastic movie. I know that the first one's a cult classic, and I don't think that the second one really got to that status, and I feel like it's underappreciated, so I wanted to put it on this list for people maybe who haven't seen the first and the second, or people who haven't given the second one a try. Definitely give this a try. It's a straight continuation of the first movie. 20 years later, definitely one you do not want to miss if you're a fan of the first. So next up, we have Alex Garland's Ex Machina. Now, when this was released in 2015, I fell in love with this movie. I love the sci-fi aspects. I love the AI aspects of it. And I love the different approach it took towards it. Now, this is a 2K to 4K upscale, I believe. I'll have to double check on this one. But it is soft at times. But again, this is inherent to the source. This is exactly how they intended. And very similar to another transfer we have coming up in the list. But I really enjoyed this movie. If you haven't given it a shot, give it a chance. It takes a really interesting look at artificial intelligence and will definitely keep you intrigued throughout. Next up, we have another one from the Nolan collection, and that's Interstellar. Now, this is my second favorite, I would say, in the Nolan collection. I'm a huge fan of this movie, and this looks absolutely gorgeous in 4K, especially those IMAX scenes. Those IMAX scenes really stand out, but as a movie, this is just a whole lot of movie. It's a long one. It will definitely require multiple rewatches, and they really stuff a lot of different topics in it, and it really goes very deep into space, and a lot of the intricacies there, but one of my favorite Nolan movies, and definitely a trip from beginning to end. Next up, we have another Alex Garland movie and a more recent release, and that's Annihilation. Now, so far, this is my favorite release of 2018 and my favorite movie of 2018. It's a 4K digital intermediate. It looks great. There are soft spots, like I said, for Ex Machina. There are soft spots, but that's inherent to the source. But most of this looks phenomenal. The Dolby Vision on here looks great when they're in the shimmer. Everything is colorful and has that rainbow hue to it. And what this movie is based on is a couple of scientists going into an area basically that was taken over, and they're going in to investigate and find out what is going on in that area. But it gets a lot more intense than that. Some of the scenes in this are some of the best I've seen of the year. A must watch in my opinion, and a must own. Next up, we have another one that's probably not going to be a surprise, and that's It. Now, this was one of my favorite movies of last year, and I really enjoyed the 4K transfer on this. The 2K to 4K upscale looked great on this. The Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos really added a ton to this mix, and the movie is just phenomenal. For those who haven't seen it, even if you're not a fan of horror, I would think this is a great entryway, just like Get Out is. I didn't find it too scary. I found the story to be very intriguing, and I found really a lot of people that didn't like horror but like Stranger Things and similar things like that to like this movie and get them into horror a little bit more. Highly recommended. Next up, we have Mother. Now, I had to put this on the list because it is a personal favorite of mine. I'm a huge fan of Darren Aronofsky, and although this movie was a bit out there and a bit too much for some people, I highly suggest it to all my subscribers to see at least once. Now, this is a 4K digital intermediate and was shot on 16mm film, so it is extremely grainy, but it does look wonderful, and it is inherent to the source, and it's an experience. Let me just put it that way. Watching this movie is an experience, and you may want to call somebody after it. And last but not least, I'm going to bundle these two together, but it's going to be Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. As you guys know, I'm a huge Blade Runner fan, and these two have been in my player probably more than any other disc. I've watched these a ton. Blade Runner 2049 is my demo-worthy disc when it comes to Atmos and visuals for the most part, and I just love these movies. There's just nothing bad I could find about these movies. I was very scared when 2049 was coming out, loving the original so much, but I was not disappointed, and really it was a great way to end this list. And I'm sure you guys have these, but if not, definitely go out there and pick up these titles. You will not be disappointed by the picture or the sound or the movie on both of them. Anyway, guys, let me know down below your favorite. Now, this doesn't have to be based on video or audio, same as mine. Just base it on your personal favorite. I want to know what discs are in your player the most, and let me know down below. I'll see you guys in the next one.